All right, everyone, the situation continues to worsen in Venezuela. I know I've done several videos fairly recently on the topic, but it's an important topic. We've got right now several zones of instability within the world. Technically Israel now because Netanyahu got indicted, but India and Pakistan fighting, Venezuela with the Lima group breathing down its neck, so to speak, Canada with Trudeau possibly being ousted, problems with the UK, with the sort of the anti-Brexiteers leading Brexit, namely Theresa May and some people like that. A lot of instability and uncertainty in the world right now. It's like U.S. GDP didn't hit the mark quite, and people were like, oh, Trump has failed. It's like growth was still steady, but it was lower than the mark. Don't you think part of that might have to do with the changing political atmosphere the world over that has nothing to do just with Trump himself? By the way, the Hanoi Summit is not going to help, although, by the way, prediction fulfilled before I get into this. Immediately after, like within 24 hours, North Korea took up a more conciliatory line and said, no, we didn't say all sanctions had to be repealed. We just said, we want to close our nuclear reactor. We just want partial sanctions relief. Oh, who fucking predicted that would happen? No mainstream pundit did. We got to look at Venezuela, though, because it's more of a flashpoint, potentially. At any given time now, Maduro could get blown away. Guaido could get dragged off and assassinated. Street battles could break out and Caracas burn half the city to the ground. It's a very fluid situation, unfortunately. What's happened now, though, is that soldiers have begun to defect. And you haven't really seen that very much until the last month or so. Mostly the people who left the country initially were like college-age kids. They're like, hey, we're trained, we're skilled, we've got no future here, we have to go elsewhere, number one, to even work. Number two, they were the people that were protesting, because, the youth tends to protest more actively. They're about, you've got brass balls, and you're sure of yourself, the testosterone's flowing, and you just want to fling bricks at police, I guess, if you're a Venezuelan or something. And so you do stuff like that. And so they did that, and then the Maduro forces, they shoot at them, basically chase them out of the country. They go to Colombia or Brazil, which, by the way, I think Brazil has closed its border entirely now. It's like shut off completely. Not that, I mean, it's still porous, it's like half jungle, so I'm sure some people are getting across it. Now you've got at least some hundreds of soldiers that over the last couple days have defected. And they're starting to organize units across the border. The thing is, these are still Venezuelans. If the Colombian military decides, yeah, we're going to go Bay of Pigs mode and hope that it turns out better, you could see considerable numbers of military units with relatively decent leadership, some upper echelon commanders, march into Venezuela, and it will technically still just be an internal war. Now, what would happen in such a situation is that Maduro would immediately lash out against the Colombians. He would probably attack their border. Then you've got a war. Unfortunately, that's looking like it's the most likely perspective thing that could happen, actually, at the moment. It's looking like that's probably what'll happen. You'll end up with a bulk of some thousands, maybe some hundreds of people in a couple days. It won't take very long before you have a significant fighting force. U.S. forces are there. Yes, it's entirely possible the U.S. will arm Venezuelan expats in Colombia. It's entirely possible. Technically speaking, that's a U.S.-backed coup. By the way, I oppose such behavior. But if it does happen, forcing out Maduro is good, although the be casualties on all sides. The problem is the same thing that I've said for a while, which is that the opposition there is not interested in capitalistic reform. They are still socialists. Socialism caused Venezuela's problems, a lack of diversification of the economy, in which the energy sector is almost solely relied upon, and speculation based on presumed future oil sales led to the mass borrowing of money for cheap, quick expansion at high interest rates, and then became a problem when the oil prices dropped. What happened is that Hugo Chavez started this policy. He said, I'm going to borrow money against the next 10 years worth of oil sales. But then oil sales went away, and this has dragged down every other aspect of the economy. The glut in oil has taken a toll on everything else, on refining, sugar refining, agriculture in every way. Tourism certainly goes out the window when you start, shooting off tear gas. Every other aspect of the Venezuelan economy has shrunk. There's no aspect of the economy that's grown. So the population's higher, minus the people that have fled over the last few years, which is millions of people apparently. It's almost like a shrinking economy as well in the quantitative sense at that point. Everything else is shrinking too. There are fewer and fewer jobs, the currency's worth less and less, the debt load is higher and higher, and oil prices still haven't climbed. Even if oil prices were to go back to where they were, the debt payments alone now are so great that it's not clear they'd be able to make it up. It'd take 100 years. You'd need 100 years of nonstop higher oil prices in order for Venezuela to just kind of stabilize. What happened is Chavez decided, hey, in order to become popular, I need to give people a better quality of life. I'm going to borrow 10 years worth of oil sales in cash. Because, you know, oil sales will stay high, we'll pump more and more of it, we'll grow our economy even more, and I'll give people microwaves and roads and cars and commie block apartments, which were half finished when the recession there hit, which means that they're basically shells, and centralized, subsidized grocery stores and free healthcare and subsidized public education stuff, and all these socialist programs. Okay, that's fine. The problem is you never put any of that money into diversifying so that you wouldn't need just oil in the future. And so when oil sales dropped, you're left with all this debt that you can no longer pay. Maduro, taking over from Chavez, says, well, it's imperative that we pay the debt. We can't sink the economy entirely. If we lose all the investment in the will of other countries, then we flatline. So we have to make the debt payments. People have to tighten their belts. What's the first thing to go? Food. Medicine, the bare necessities for the poor and middle class. And this is really who suffers. Like when that moron, that Daily Beast reporter, somebody sent me a video he had made yesterday of a supermarket in Caracas, and he's like, well, there's so much food, there's meat everywhere and stuff. Why do you think that those shelves are so conspicuously fully stocked? It's because that is a special location in a gated community in Caracas where the rich go. That's where Maduro's insiders, the chosen people of Venezuela who can denominate in USD and are in that little safe community, that's where they shop. Of course it's well stocked. He's going to have the will of that proportion of the population. He has to, otherwise he gets overthrown. The military generals and their families, their insiders, the business insiders, the foreign dignitaries, the ambassadors, the upper level investors, they don't want to live the way that 99% of Venezuelans live. So you're looking at a supermarket that caters towards maybe 100,000 people in one city in Venezuela, and you're extrapolating that to mean, oh, nothing's wrong. Let me go to the richest, most pro-Maduro area in Caracas. That must be what all life in Venezuela is like. But then I look at camera footage from in the streets of Venezuela, or I look at footage from any of the outlying areas, and I see, oh, just a bunch of poverty and starvation. So yeah, I'm gonna go with that, and then they start to say, well, CNN is lying to you. Fuck CNN. I don't need CNN to tell me how things are in Venezuela. I can get it from Venezuelans. I can get it from Venezuelans. They'll post on 4chan. They'll post on my videos. They'll post on this video. Some of you are in Venezuela. Or you're expats, you're in Colombia or Brazil or something, you're from Venezuela, you know what it's like. This moron from fucking Daily Beast doesn't know what it's like. He spends 2 days down there, says, well, this place doesn't look impoverished, it's better than the United States, we should be socialist too. Yeah, because you're counting on being one of those 1%ers, you know, believe it or not, that would have access to that private marketplace. Because you'll be part of the you'll be a party insider. This is what commies and socialists never get. They always assume that they're going to be one of the party loyals. They're going to be some upper level, like they'll be appointed to head some people's bureau or something, and so they'll be able to have the imported Cuban cigars and Russian vodka and hookers from Ukraine and stuff like that. No, you're going to be on a fucking farm. You're going to be on a fucking collective farm, and it'll be better for you because then at least, I know you have the sit at your desk all day lifestyle and snort coke like at the BBC. Maybe you could do with a little bit of hard labor, 12 hours a fucking day, lose a few pounds. That's about all. Peace out.